He wanted to advocate to the Koreans within the call of strengthening their relationship. How about we spar the usage of the equal device as the S-rank hunters? Jinwoo commenced going down with the president of the affiliation, and he began saying, permits exclude magical and unusual training due to the fact they would be more difficult to assess. We additionally decided to add a couple guidelines. Whoever grazes their warring party's lower back or knocks them to the floor can be considered the winner in place of a one-on-one duel. We're providing a set competition. In other words, it doesn't be counted who their opponent is. Whilst the translator conveyed all of this to Ruji, he started to understand what it supposed that the team that turned into the primary to knock out a member of the other team might manage. To circulate, the hunter-killers would have a large benefit if they observed the preceding rule. He spoke back that he agreed to have South Korea combat in opposition to Japan's 4 hunters. Jinwoo stood there looking and found out that Rujan did not seem to have decided to take part. He desires to look at them. And anyway, it is no longer every day you get to see a fight amongst rank hunters. And it's an awesome factor. Jinwoo got here right. Here today, one of Japan's hunters started out to speculate that he could draw some conclusions about their strength based totally on their recent fight. However, it seemed to him that this man had an ace up his sleeve. The female from Japan's squad became also watching and realized that this turned into a 4x4 struggle, which intended her opponent will be the other female throughout from her. And so that they had already determined to begin sparring one. In every of Japan's hunters realized that his opponent was capable of remodeling right into a large, and he could surely experience the warfare depending simplest on natural electricity. It would be terrific, just terrific. That is what an actual man should be like. They clashed in a fierce conflict and decided to look who will be the stronger of the two at the equal moment. The opposite hunters also started out to fight, and one in all them observed that the alternative was very rapid and assured in his speed. If he were given even a millimeter nearer, he could be finished. However, thankfully, for him, he makes a speciality of lengthy range and attacks. He threw his magic arrow that flew at the opponent. They persisted to combat, but a few had an advantage in energy. The president of the association checked out all of this and realized that this education middle were constructed and fortified with effective magic. Stone's average hunters would not be capable of leave a dent right here, as those men had made a mess of the vicinity in literally seconds. Letting these kids take part inside the conflict is alternatively unfortunate selection, as their opponent is the strongest S-rank hunter. They should be wary as he cannot. Most effective take hold of their arm, but additionally ruin it at this factor. One of the Jap hunters found out that his opponent changed into the usage of cheap tricks, and no one said he would comply with the policies, and most effective aimed for the palms. And again, in any case, he decided that simplest, the most powerful, could live to tell the tale right here. And at one moment he approached his opponent. He wanted to supply a bloodthirsty blow, but he sponsored away and threw himself aside. His opponent found out it became bloodlust. Jinwoo puzzled why he had retreated, and most in all likelihood, he becomes simply scared. However, the masked guy commenced to mention that he was excited again once more because being a hunter was now not for him. His opponent started out to reflect that he wasn't incorrect, and his name is Kumamoto. He does not even recognize if he's a brilliant tactician or just a coward, but nevertheless, he determined that he is particularly aggressive. Ruji appears to want to look the level of their capabilities with this guy. But the Korean Association, Hunter, has determined that his opponent is ready for what's approximately to show up after all if he's going to treat him like a guinea pig. And just a little bit, he is going to get a lot extra critical. His M opponent realized that his eyes had changed, and to him it turned into horror, for he not wanted to be here. The hunter from the South Korean affiliation commenced moving straight at him with first-rate pace, and as soon as he threw one punch, the man dodged, and he found out that he changed into greater cowardly than he conceived. His awakening turned into going to position him on the top among all rank hunters. The spectators who have been looking all of this found out that they had been even larger monsters, and as compared to them, his battle was simply infant's play. But there has been a noisy sound, and all and sundry noticed that the large man from the South Korean affiliation was toppled to the ground, and he could not trust his eyes, because it became the first time for him on the identical moment. The opposite South Korean affiliation man was also pinned in opposition to the wall, and his hands had been grabbed. Now there has been a battle happening wherein 4 had been fighting too, and the Japanese association changed into in most people. But a hunter from South Korea changed into unwilling to give up, and started to tell them who might attack him. Subsequent, he knew that whoever fought him could regret it. On the equal time a battle began among the 2 women, Huntress Cha attacked with exquisite speed, and her opponent didn't anticipate her to be so fast. But it wasn't simply that the opponent could not discover a hole in Huntress Cha's protection. She used to be known as a dancer, and he or she earned this nickname due to her agile moves that resembled a dance. This trait allowed her to incapacitate her opponent right away. However, due to her guild leader's ban, she not used this nickname, so only a few human beings know approximately. His jaw swung, and with that pace, her opponent's cap flew to the facet. On the same second, the huntress moved to the back of his return and touched his back. When she turned into finished with that female, she decided to hurry up and help her accomplice Baek-yoon, who was fighting in opposition to the 2. But at that second, the 3rd hunter approached her and began to say that he knew that those couldn't be troubled with. So he determined to cope with Hunter Cha as quickly as he approached her. She reacted and started out attacking him with short actions right on his face. Folks who have been looking all of this couldn't understand what had took place after all. It appeared like arrows shot from a machine gun. They failed to understand how normally she had struck her fist, perhaps around 10 times even more. Such a big number of punches in this kind of quick time frame made it impossible for him to damn them. At this moment, the huntress realized that she had overdone it a bit, and Hunter Kumamoto became covered in blood from those punches. From that moment on, he commenced to get angrier and angrier, and being in that kingdom, he became absolutely exclusive. And it wasn't even an alternate of persona. He became just dropping his thoughts, and at the quit of the combat, he did not recollect. something he should use not best forbidden techniques. However, also assault even his allies, and in the long run, in A-ranked dungeon without outdoor assist. However, if he's involved in conquering rank gates, then him waking up as an S rank would not make any feel. Ruji started out speaking me. Approximately how if everybody from the Korean team became in threat, they must be stopped straight away. He handiest wanted to check on them, but the translator started out telling him that if he wanted to restore him, it became quality to do it proper. Now, in spite of everything, they would not be capable of have enough money compensation for the harm accomplished. And as soon as that man got indignant, he become already status. They're looking at Hunter Cho, together with his terrifying gaze. The huntress realized that he changed into too speedy, and his punch turned into already flying straight at her as quickly as he hit. He was amazed that his foot became stopped. And there Jinwoo used to be masking the huntress. Jinwoo started telling her that it changed into only a competition, and his bloodlust turned into going over the top. Jinwoo asked the huntress if she minded if he interfered. However, that man got even angrier and started attacking me in an immediate. Jinwoo was able to take hold of his arm and twist him. Placing him on the floor, Ruji, who turned into watching all this, didn't realize what kind of flow this become, and asked his translator if she becomes certain he changed into a magic magnificence. Hunter, he commenced to say, Hunter Jinwoo, suppose the quality answer proper nows to just accept the Korean group's defeat. And Jinwoo agreed, because it appeared like Hunter Beck had also been caught. However, Jinwoo found out that the gap in their talents become pretty big. Or even if he reincarnated, it wouldn't trade whatever. Suddenly, Jinwoo heard a person start talking to me, and it was Ryujo, the translator started out, translating that he desired to fight me one-on-one. Jinwoo looked at him and found out that it was in charisma permeating the entirety around him. Even without an interpreter, Jinwoo can recognize what he is trying to accomplish and what he needs on his own. He wants to find out what Jinwoo am capable of. However, Jinwoo don't know what his motives are, but this is only a way to find out how robust Jinwoo come to be. Because the demonic castle Rui checked out me and didn't understand why Jinwoo was smiling. And at that second, the translator began to tell him that Jinwoo take delivery of his provide, however, only on one circumstance.
If you want to find out what happens next, make sure to stay tuned for part 2. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like this amazing video for more exciting updates.
The translator started explaining that Jinwoo accepted his request, but only on one condition. He said he would accept it if he fought with full power. The other hunters didn't understand what was happening, but Ruji was curious. Since they had a high-ranking healer with them, this fight shouldn't lead to serious injuries. Ruiji liked the idea and asked the healer to take care of the wounded, especially himself, pointing at himself. The other hunters from the Korean Association started guessing that this was the little-known tent hunter. One of them couldn't believe that this young guy would fight Ruiji Goto, the top hunter. Cha Hunter thought nothing bad would happen since Jinwoo had cleared a high-ranked dungeon alone and killed 100 high-level orcs. But suddenly, Hunter Beck told her she was doing well despite being surrounded by so many hunters. She replied that she couldn't be distracted, especially now that they had arrived on the island. She then asked Beck if he knew Jinwoo and if he could stop this fight. But Beck said it made sense for Ruiji to fight Jinwoo himself. He also admitted that he wanted to see the fight and wouldn't interfere because the thought of it excited him. If Jinwoo had become stronger than he was during their last encounter, then this fight would be something to watch. At that moment, I decided to start the fight, but I didn't expect my opponent to act before I did. His hand was already near my face, but I dodged it successfully. I was also very fast, and as soon as I got away from him, he attacked me before I could even finish speaking. Ruiji was sure that I wasn't a magic-type hunter because of my fast movements and silent steps. He started thinking that I wouldn't be able to fool him and decided to force me to reveal all my secrets. I looked at him and realized he wasn't like the other hunters at all. There was a much stronger power inside him. But his strength didn't bother me at all. As I dodged his attacks with a smile, my opponent started getting frustrated. The Japanese hunters watching the fight began to wonder if they should stop it. After all, Ruiji was taking this fight very seriously, and his attacks were intense. The other hunters could barely keep up with his speed, but Jinwoo was handling it well. Not many people could dodge so many strikes from Japan's strongest hunter. Hunter Cha noticed that Jinwoo wasn't holding back at all, even with Ruiji's constant attacks. It was as if he was provoking him on purpose. At the same time, a hunter called Absolute Weapon returned and saw the fight. He realized that something interesting had happened while he was gone. Ruiji kept attacking and started wondering if Jinwoo was just lucky, or if he really was this skilled. He realized that as long as he wasn't using his full power, there was no way to be sure of the battle's outcome. So, he changed his mind and decided to kill me. At that moment, I got a notification from the system. I felt an overwhelming sense of bloodlust nearby. I knew that if I delayed even a little, the system might give me an emergency quest. Just like during the battle with the dungeon warden, Ruji's final attack nearly took out one of my eyes, but he didn't understand how dangerous my power was. He almost grabbed my wrist, but instead, he got angry and thought I was playing with him. I wasn't sure if I had caught him off guard, but if I had grabbed his wrist, the fight would have ended instantly. I knew he didn't want that either. As soon as I got serious, we swung at each other, and the ground beneath us shook. The other hunters didn't wait any longer and decided to stop us. As they got closer, they started holding us back. One of the hunters built a wall of ice. Another hunter declared that this fight had gone far enough. After all, Ruiji would be leading the Japanese hunters in a few days, and they couldn't afford for him to get injured. Since the duel was getting out of control, one of the hunters asked the translator to end the fight. Hunter Baek walked up to me and said maybe he shouldn't have gotten involved. I told him it was fine. Another hunter smiled and said I had not only gone up against Ruiji, but had only gotten a small scratch on my cheek. He said my body was incredibly strong, and that I had the physique of a magic-type hunter, even though they lacked fighters. He then asked if I had joined any hunter groups yet. If not, he suggested I join theirs. But another hunter standing on the balcony shouted that Jinwoo was also a magic-type hunter. I stood there, realizing I had gone a little too far. Now, I understood the strength of all the hunters gathered here. I also noticed something else. None of them had seen my shadow soldiers, despite being high-level hunters. Even Ruiji hadn't sensed them. I started thinking about what the Hunters Association president had asked me. Would I take part in the Jeju Island operation? The president was shocked when he heard my response. Meanwhile, the translator asked Ruiji if he was okay. He felt strange and was looking at the ground, as if something had happened to him after that fight. The next day, at the White Tiger Guild, Hunter Beck sat in his chair, wondering if being awakened twice meant unlimited growth. He also wondered how much Jinwoo would be worth to them. However, he knew it was useless to try recruiting new hunters at the moment. There were still ways to contact them, and now it was time for Plan B. His phone rang, and he looked at the final list of participants for an event happening in 4 days, but he was shocked. Jinwoo's name wasn't on the list, and he couldn't believe his eyes. At the same time, Ryuji was on the phone with Matsumoto, telling him that there was a strong hunter in Korea, but Matsumoto responded that he was probably weaker than Ryuji. Ryuji admitted that he didn't even know the guy's name. Matsumoto asked what his name was, and Ryuji replied, Hunter Jinwoo. He explained that Jinwoo had reawakened and recently got his new rank. Matsumoto found this odd, saying that no such name was on the list. Ryuji didn't understand what he meant. Then, Matsumoto mentioned that the final list of Korean hunters for the upcoming raid had just been released. 6 hunters would leave in 4 days as part of the Korean team. Ryuji was confused about why the president couldn't form a team without an artificial hunter, but it didn't matter anymore. 16 hunters would be joining this time, so there shouldn't be any problems. Ryuji realized he had worried for no reason and decided to call back when the raid started. Meanwhile, on the island where the hunters would be arriving in 4 days, the queen of the ants ordered her people to leave. There was no more food on the island, and the ants had started eating each other. She declared that they needed a stronger army, warriors who could protect their kingdom and make their enemies tremble in fear. Inside an egg, a massive ant responded, saying he would make their enemies fear them. He vowed to become stronger than anyone else. As soon as he hatched, waves of powerful energy erupted from the island, followed by a terrifying presence. A little while later, I took my mother and sister to our apartment, but when we arrived, the place was a mess. I quickly realized that while I was in the demon castle, things had become chaotic. But my mother reassured us that house chores after 4 years were no big deal. We could clean everything together. As we cleaned, she mentioned that the house had gotten really dusty in places that weren't usually visible. I told her that since we had been living here since childhood, it wasn't surprising. But then, she suddenly asked if I had heard anything about my father. I hesitated before answering, saying I hadn't heard anything. I wondered how she would react if I told her that I had also become a hunter like my father. There was a reason my mother hadn't moved out of this apartment, even though I had already made more money than most people could imagine. She was still waiting for my father, believing that one day he would return home. At the same time, a group of men was discussing the ants' terrifying evolution. Every new generation of ants was far superior to the previous one. The ants that appeared in the first and second raids had crawled like normal insects, but now, in just 2 years, they had changed dramatically. Recent footage showed ants that stood upright like humans. Their heads were smaller, making them more agile, and they could use all 4 limbs like arms. A new image revealed an even more terrifying discovery. The ants had now developed large wings and could fly. After the discussion about the terrifying evolution of the ants, the scene shifts back to Korea. Jinwoo, now aware of the growing threat on Jeju Island, begins strategizing for the upcoming raid. The Korean Hunters Association has finalized its team for the mission, but Jinwoo's name is not on the official list. This surprises many, as his strength is undeniable. However, Jinwoo remains silent, waiting for the right moment to act. Meanwhile, in Japan, the higher-ups discuss their own plans regarding the Jeju Island raid. They are confident in their elite team of hunters, led by Ryuji Goto. However, they underestimate the threat lurking beneath the surface. The ants are not just evolving, they are preparing for war. The newly hatched ant, now radiating an overwhelming aura, possesses intelligence far beyond the others. Unlike the mindless drones before, this ant exhibits signs of strategic thinking, making it an even greater danger. Back at home, Jinwoo spends time with his mother and sister, cherishing the peaceful moments before the inevitable battle. His mother, still hopeful about his father's return, remains unaware of how powerful her son has become. Jinwoo, on the other hand, knows that the life of an S-rank hunter is filled with dangers beyond imagination. As the raid day approaches, tensions rise. Hunters from Korea and Japan prepare themselves, but Jinwoo remains on the sidelines, waiting for his opportunity. The world is unaware that the strongest force in this battle is not in their ranks. He is observing from the shadows.
2 warships and 4 smaller battleships were sailing near China and Taiwan, close to Jeju Island. Another 12 battleships, carrying hunters, were stationed north of the island. If even one enemy slipped past them, the ants would notice immediately and attack. A hunter asked his mentor if their plan would work. The mentor replied that they could only know by trying. The Knights Guild was there for that reason, and their defense team had to stop any flying creatures from reaching the mainland. One hunter chose to stay at the back, trusting his guildmates. The deputy guildmaster, responsible for combat training, struggled to imagine how the battle would unfold. Another hunter reassured him, saying their guild's success was because of his leadership and knowledge. However, he still felt uneasy sending their leader to the front lines and asked him to return safely. Meanwhile, some hunters argued over the phone about sending the rising star into battle. If anything happened to her, the guild would not forgive them. Hunters from different guilds were spread across the south at the request of the Hunter Association. If the raid succeeded, they didn't want any ants escaping to the mainland. The association's leader, an A-rank hunter, and 10 D-rank hunters were defending the state's borders. Retired and inactive awakened hunters also stepped up, about 5,000 of them, making up 1/10 of the country's awakened hunters. In one of the helicopters, a cameraman from the official press prepared to broadcast the raid live. The broadcast had a 10-minute delay, so editors could remove mistakes. Some hunters wondered why a cameraman was coming to such a dangerous place. Another hunter reminded them that their duty was to protect people, which included informing them. The cameraman, an awakened hunter himself, assured them he was capable. Many awakened people chose careers outside of combat, and he was one of them. He had recorded other raids before, but wasn't sure if his past experiences would help this time. Another hunter told him not to worry. The Hunter Association approved the broadcast because they believed the raid would succeed. The operation began. The Japanese hunters attacked first, drawing the ants out of hiding. From the helicopters, hunters watched as the ants swarmed out. One hunter, called Absolute Weapon, jumped from a helicopter and used fire magic to burn some ants chasing them. Another hunter watching wasn't impressed. Only one ant was injured while the others kept coming. Absolute Weapon steadied himself and unleashed another attack, burning the rest. For about an hour, the Japanese hunters distracted the soldier ants while the others moved toward the queen. The second aircraft carrier activated a signal jammer, cutting off the queen's communication. Some ants adapted quickly, while others got confused. A huntress with large daggers sliced through the ants, telling her teammate to keep up or risk dying. Team Bravo bragged that they would clear out the ants before the Korean team even reached the queen. Another hunter, Kong, played around, ripping off ants' wings. Despite his age, he still acted like a child. Suddenly, an explosion erupted from a volcano. A hunter named Jae-In used ice powers to freeze the ants inside. He wondered what would happen if his ice clashed with fire. The squad moved deeper into the queen's lair inside the volcano. The tunnels were like a maze. Absolute Weapon launched fireballs into the passages. If he heard no explosions, it meant those paths led deeper inside. Meanwhile, I finished my daily training and noticed the streets were empty. Everyone was watching the raid. The Korean and Japanese rank hunters were powerful, but there was no point in watching unless something unexpected happened. Inside the volcano, hunters faced the queen's guards. One hunter noted that these ants had poor eyesight and only protected the nest, making them easier to fight. The healer sensed that the queen might try to escape. Another hunter pointed out that she had nowhere to run. The cameraman struggled with the darkness, but trusted his team to adjust the footage later. As they moved through the cave, they found a massive cluster of ant eggs. Among them, one egg was huge. They wondered what kind of creature would hatch from it, but focused on their mission, killing the queen. Outside, hunters fought off attacking ants. One hunter, covered in blue ant liquid, was frustrated by how persistent the creatures were. He had injuries on his shoulder and ribs. The healer offered to help but wanted something in return. The injured hunter was surprised. What could she possibly want when she already made more money than him? Before she could answer, a monster appeared and instantly killed her. Another hunter tried to avenge her but was also taken down in one hit. A third hunter swung his huge sword but met the same fate. A hunter with a large shield identified the attacker as a royal. Guard. These creatures were as strong as ranked hunters, but unlike humans, their movements were predictable. Hunter Cha jumped onto an ant's back and sliced it apart. Another ant attacked her from behind, but she reacted just in time to destroy it. She realized these guards were tougher than expected. Fortunately, there weren't too many of them. A hunter reassured his teammates that he had their backs. The White Tiger Guild leader noticed he was extra confident today. The hunter joked, warning him not to make rookie mistakes. As they fought, they noticed that cutting off an ant's head wasn't enough. They had to sever its limbs to stop it completely. They suspected stronger second-generation hunter ants were ahead and needed to prepare. A mage cast a reinforcement spell, boosting the team's strength. Some hunters felt strong enough to tear through the ants effortlessly. The healer stayed at the back, joking that he'd take on a few ants if needed. The White Tiger leader told him no one trusted a healer in battle. He should stay behind and observe. Outside, things got worse. A squad was sent to check on Charlie's team, which had gone silent. When they arrived, they found their comrades' lifeless bodies on the ground. A masked hunter, unable to believe what he was seeing, dropped his mask. A terrible stench filled the air. Overwhelmed, he unleashed his power, freezing everything around the corpses. Inside the queen's lair, the hunter spent too much time fighting the guards. One hunter said delays happened when fights lasted over 5 minutes. With the reinforcement spell, they moved twice as fast, slicing through ants with ease. They estimated 15 minutes to reach the royal chamber and 30 minutes to finish the mission. Their goal was to eliminate the queen. The White Tiger leader used his senses and found the queen at the back of the cave, guarded by 8 ants. The huntress volunteered to handle the guards while the others fought the queen. A fire mage prepared a massive attack. A fire dragon spell aimed straight at the queen, but just as he launched it, an ant crept up behind him. Luckily, his allies blocked the attack. A hunter with a bow reassured him, saying not to worry because he would bring them the head of the White Tiger. He decided not to hold back anymore. Ignoring all restrictions, he was ready to become a monster if it meant wiping out these insects. Hunter Cha was shocked. She had never seen him like this before. Suddenly, a teammate shouted for her to act. She activated Provoking Wave, drawing all the ants' attention to her. Seeing that her skill worked, the others rushed toward the ant queen. They knew the guards would abandon their positions, so they focused on stopping the queen. A hunter with a large shield and spear stepped forward. He had already decided he would be the one to fight her first. Meanwhile, a hunter recording the battle couldn't believe what he was seeing. His viewer count spiked by 80%. He wanted to move closer so people could see everything, but someone grabbed him and told him to stop. They had entered the boss's territory. His safety was no longer guaranteed. At a nearby apartment, an old woman asked her husband if he wanted to watch the raid. He wasn't interested. She continued talking. The enemies would fall today. He dismissed it, saying they always claimed that. But she believed in the hunters. On TV, the final battle unfolded. Just as the hunters thought they had won, something terrifying happened. A monstrous ant appeared and absorbed power from the dead queen. It howled in rage, and the hunters realized they were not done yet. Fear gripped the hunters as the ant suddenly moved. It was like teleportation. In an instant, it appeared behind Hunter Cha. Before she could react, it struck her side, sending her crashing into a wall. The impact left a gaping hole, and pain surged through her body. Another hunter called out to her, but before he could react, the ant was already beside him. With a single strike, it shattered his massive shield, breaking his arm. A second attack followed, severing both his arms completely. The beast-like hunter lunged, but the ant was too fast, inflicting heavy damage in seconds. The flame magic hunter launched an attack, but the ant slashed him from head to toe, leaving him helpless. A bow-wielding hunter fired, believing the ant couldn't dodge, but the creature simply caught the arrow and snapped it in half. The ant was unstoppable, countering every attack with ease. After breaking the arrow, it turned and struck the beast-like hunter, sending him flying. Meanwhile, the tank hunter, now armless, murmured that as long as the healer was alive, they still had hope. The healer hid using camouflage, suppressing his presence. But this skill had a flaw. He couldn't move while using it. However, the ant had already sensed him. It grabbed the tank hunter by the leg and slammed him repeatedly into the ground before tossing him aside. The healer, horrified, couldn't understand how the ant had found him. His camouflage was still active. Then the beast-like hunter shouted, "I am a hunter-healer." The healer was stunned. Even while invisible, the ant had detected him. Before he could react, the ant appeared behind him, piercing his chest with a single strike. His magic faded instantly. The beast-like hunter watched in horror as his comrade bled out. The healer's final words were, "Run. You can't defeat this monster." The remaining hunters were frozen in shock. The healer was dead, and the monstrous ant stood before them, ready to continue its slaughter. The saber-wielding hunter, enraged, charged at the ant, but the creature effortlessly grabbed him by the neck and lifted him off the ground. Then, to everyone's shock, the ant spoke. It mocked them, calling them weak, revealing that it had devoured another being and absorbed their strength and memories. It mentioned a king, but Hunter Han didn't understand. The other hunters, severely wounded, lay helpless. Suddenly, the ant sensed a powerful presence outside. Without hesitation, it dropped the struggling hunter and flew away. Outside, hunters moved cautiously through the forest. First, they lost contact with Charlie Team. Now, Delta Team had gone silent. Ruji, sensing interference in their radios, tried reaching Bravo Team. When he made contact, he instructed them to hold position while he advanced alone. Just then, he received a call from Gato, the head of the Matsumoto Association. Meanwhile, in China, discussions arose about the turmoil in Korea. The flying ants couldn't reach China, but some speculated that Japan's help was strategic, a move to make Yuji a national-level hunter. Back at the battlefield, Ruji arrived to a horrifying sight. His teammates had been slaughtered. Reporting the casualties, his superior dismissed the losses, saying weaker members were sent to minimize overall damage. But this reasoning unsettled Ruji. His unease deepened when he noticed the frequency jammers had stopped, luring all the monsters back to the nest. His superior asked about Korea's chances. Based on past battles, Ruji grimly stated they had no hope. This news pleased his superior, as their plan to weaken Korea's elite hunters was working. Suddenly, Ruji was ambushed by the ant that had decimated the Korean hunters. Realizing its strength, he ordered his team to retreat. Preparing to fight, he was overwhelmed by the sheer aura of the creature. The ant, amused, asked Ruji if he was the king among hunters. Intrigued by its intelligence, Ruji confidently declared himself king, but the ant scoffed and attacked, shattering Ruji's sword instantly. A single devastating blow struck him down. Inside the cave, the remaining hunters fought desperately against the ant swarm but were overwhelmed. Just as all seemed lost, shadowy figures emerged, pushing back the ants. The beast-like hunter was stunned. Where did these black soldiers come from? At that moment, Jinwoo stood still in the city. He knew it was time. With a command, Shadow Exchange, he teleported to his soldier's location. Elsewhere, a videographer filming the battle feared for his life. He regretted his last words to his father, wishing he had been kinder. As he braced for death, a massive sword slashed through the ants, saving him. Meanwhile, in the control room broadcasting the fight, the staff panicked. The chief lamented that they couldn't air a massacre. But just as hope faded, a staff member announced an unknown figure had appeared. The chief ordered an immediate broadcast. The world had to see this. Inside the cave, Jinwoo had arrived with his powerful shadow army. Korea's last hope now rested on him. He commanded Baru, his chief soldier, to provoke the ants. As the battle raged, Jinwoo swiftly eliminated armored ants, buying time for the wounded hunters. His massive shadow warrior shielded them while Jinwoo dominated the battlefield. From now on, there was nothing to fear. The fight was intense but brief. To end it quickly, Jinwoo resurrected the fallen ants, turning them into shadow soldiers. The videographer, in shock, hesitated as he watched the undead ants fight their former allies. Meanwhile, Jinwoo rushed to heal the injured hunters. Most recovered instantly, but Hunter Cha remained unconscious. Her wounds were too severe. As he prepared to evacuate, a chilling presence entered the cave. The ant that had crushed Ruji returned, declaring the king outside was a fraud. It locked eyes with Jinwoo, sensing something different. The hunters, still in shock, realized this was the same monster that had killed Ruji. But Jinwoo stood firm. Handing Hunter Cha to his subordinate, he stepped forward. His connection with Ruji's shadow had vanished, and he knew why. This ant had utterly destroyed him. The ants spoke in human language, and their clashing auras sent shockwaves through the cavern. It let out a bone-chilling roar, making even Jinwoo pause. But then, he smirked. Despite its speech, the ant was still just an insect. The eerie, human-like behavior only made it more grotesque. Outside, citizens watching the broadcast saw the screen cut to technical difficulties. Confused, they wondered why the fight had suddenly disappeared. The news reported that Hunter Beck had died, while the others' fates were unknown. Then as the broadcast resumed, the world watched in shock. The ant was speaking, and it had killed Ruji. Back in Japan, the president of the Hunter Association asked his subordinate where the monster had gone. When he learned that it had returned to the Queen's chamber, the chairman could hardly believe it. The Korean hunters had survived. Furthermore, an unknown but immensely powerful entity had appeared. The chairman immediately ordered the broadcast to be turned back on. At home, Jinwoo's sister asked her mother why she had turned on the TV. Their mother, unaware of what was unfolding, mentioned that the broadcast had suddenly stopped. When his sister asked about Jinwoo's whereabouts, their mother simply said he had left in a hurry, assuring her he'd return soon. At the Korean Hunter Association, the president shot up from his seat upon hearing that Jinwoo had appeared on the island. His assistant tried to calm him, but his excitement was overwhelming. He even broke his chair in his enthusiasm. Back on the battlefield, the mighty ant lunged at Jinwoo, striking with such force that the very ground shook. The impact sent rocks flying in all directions. The hunters watching were stunned. The power seemed evenly matched. But then, the ant scoffed, calling Jinwoo weak and unworthy of the title king. Yet what they saw next left them speechless. Jinwoo had withstood the full force of the attack and was still standing. Blood dripping from his lips, Jinwoo smirked. Activating his ruler's hand ability, he gathered his strength and launched a counterattack. The ant, realizing it couldn't dodge, braced itself. But Jinwoo didn't hold back. His strike sent the ant flying backward, crashing into the cave wall with immense force. The watching hunters could only stare in disbelief. One murmured, "Isn't he supposed to be a magic-type hunter?" Another replied, "I thought so, but I never expected this kind of strength." The battle was far from over, but one thing was clear. Jinwoo was not just any hunter. He was something far greater. He was just a normal hunter who could only watch from a distance. The sheer power of their magic was so intense that he felt like he was going crazy just from sensing it. The ant, after getting hit on the head, realized that his strength was fading. He couldn't understand who he really was or where his power came from. The battle continued at full force, and when they clashed, both were thrown back from the impact. But Hunter Jinwoo was stronger. His punches caused serious damage, and the ant noticed that its exoskeleton was starting to crack. It was shocking because its body was supposed to be so tough that no one could harm it. But now this hunter had appeared, and everything was falling apart. The ant kept taking damage, but suddenly it managed to wound Jinwoo. It wasn't a serious injury, just a scratch on his face. When Jinwoo realized that he had been bitten, he quickly jumped back and sensed something was wrong. The bite was poisoned, and the venom was now spreading inside his body. It was a paralyzing poison, one of the deadliest in the world, and it became even stronger when mixed with magical energy. The ant groaned in pain and called Jinwoo despicable. Then it tried to land one final blow to finish him off. Jinwoo lowered his head, ready to take the hit. Meanwhile, the last remaining Japanese hunters appeared in the city. One of them was paralyzed with fear, realizing they had no chance against this monstrous creature. However, a female hunter refused to accept that and grabbed him by the collar, trying to bring him back to his senses. She insisted that he was losing his mind, but he kept repeating that they couldn't win. Frustrated, she pushed him aside and told him he was being useless. She then looked at a helicopter hovering above and pointed out that there were even bigger problems to worry about. Just then, Jinwoo blocked the ant's final punch. The ant's large red eyes widened in disbelief. How could this hunter do that? In response, Jinwoo delivered a powerful strike right to the ant's face, sending it crashing into a rock. At that moment, Jinwoo felt more in control of the fight than ever before. His increased perception allowed him to sense the ant's fear, just like the hunters watching from behind. Looking at the weakened ant on the ground, he knew he had to finish it quickly. The ant watched as Jinwoo leaped up the mountain and aimed a kick straight at its body. But just as he got close, an explosion from his kick shook the ground. The other hunters lost sight of him for a moment, but Jinwoo quickly noticed that the ant was now in the air. It could fly. The ant realized that even the poison had no effect on this hunter. It understood that trying to overpower Jinwoo with strength alone was pointless. Instead, it decided to rely on its speed. If it made its body smaller, it would be able to move faster. The ant knew the fight was nearly over, but Jinwoo was determined to end it now. He drew his daggers, ready for the final battle. The ant charged at him with incredible speed, but at the last second, Jinwoo dodged. In an instant, he was in the air, striking with his blades. The ant managed to block some attacks and threw Jinwoo aside, sending him crashing into a wall. But Jinwoo quickly recovered, using the wall to propel himself back toward the ant. Their fight was so fast that the other hunters couldn't even keep up with their movements. The ant couldn't believe it. Jinwoo was getting faster. It didn't make sense. As a hunter, he should not have been able to match the ant's speed. However, Jinwoo knew that his rank was now as high as a demon king's, or even higher. He was much stronger than before. His weapons had also improved drastically since his previous battles. He was confident that the ant's exoskeleton was about to shatter. This was his chance. Jinwoo unleashed a series of devastating attacks, making the ant twist in pain. Realizing he had to finish this, he activated his critical strike skill. His blows pierced through the ant's body, creating multiple holes. Then a system notification appeared, confirming that his skill had evolved into an even stronger version, Maiming Strike. The ant panicked. It knew it couldn't defeat Jinwoo and started running away. But Jinwoo wasn't going to let it escape. He activated his skill again, now even more powerful. As he closed in, he slashed at the ant from every direction, like a whirlwind of blades. The ant was thrown to the side, realizing it had no way to stop Jinwoo. But suddenly it had one last idea. It let out a loud cry, summoning the other ants from the cave and sending them all charging toward Jinwoo. The ant smirked, telling Jinwoo that he was about to die. But Jinwoo only smiled back. Then he said his signature word, rise. At that moment, his monstrous army of shadow soldiers appeared behind him. A massive battle broke out. The shadow soldiers clashed against the giant ants, but the ants couldn't stand a chance. Jinwoo's soldiers were far stronger. To end it quickly, he called in his strongest summon, a giant beast named Baru. Jinwoo ordered him to aim carefully at the ants and avoid harming the humans. Baru nodded in understanding. Then he unleashed his powerful skills, creating a massive explosion that shook the entire area. The volcano itself was now breaking apart. The hunters watching from afar couldn't believe their eyes. They were witnessing something beyond human understanding. Some even thought Jinwoo had summoned the devil himself. The ant, seeing all this, was in complete shock. It had always been the strongest. It had evolved many times, believing itself to be the king of this island. But now everything had changed. Whereas it saw Jinwoo emerging from the flames, the only thought in its mind was escape. It tried to heal itself, using a stolen healing ability from a human hunter it had devoured. Jinwoo noticed this and was stunned. It was the first time he had seen a monster steal and use a human skill. The ant took off, flying as fast as it could. But Jinwoo wasn't going to let it get away. He activated his ruler's hand skill and slammed the ant back down to the ground. The ant coughed up its orange blood, struggling to move. Jinwoo stood over it, declaring that it wasn't going anywhere. Then he activated his Maiming Strike skill one final time, destroying the ant completely. A system notification confirmed his victory, and his level increased. But suddenly, someone shouted. Hunter Cha was in critical condition. Jinwoo realized he had spent too much time fighting the ant. He needed a healer, but none were available. Shadow exchange wouldn't work, and they wouldn't reach a hospital in time. He had to find another way. Jinwoo turned to a cameraman and told him to turn off his camera. The cameraman hesitated, not understanding why. Jinwoo gave him a serious look and warned that if he didn't turn it off, he would break it. Realizing the urgency, the cameraman complied. Jinwoo quickly ordered his shadows to search for the body of a healer. They soon found one, but the healer's head had been bitten off. Jinwoo wasn't sure if shadow extraction would work, but he had to try. He attempted to extract the shadow, but it failed. He tried again, but it failed once more. He realized the healer's soul was resisting, but he had no choice. He had to save Hunter Cha. With one final attempt, he succeeded. As the revived shadow began to heal Cha, the other hunters watched in stunned silence. They finally understood. Jinwoo wasn't just a hunter. He had the power to control the dead, and now with his strength growing, he was ready for whatever came next.